Greetings. These are all of the A Song of Ice and Fire books. This is my set. There are 7 of them, but there are only 5 books, because 2 of them are split into 2 volumes. And they're not even next to each other. That's so annoying. Okay, I have to put these down somehow. Okay, welcome to my review video. I'm filming this in 3 different parts so that hopefully I can email them to Diana without my computer blowing up, because that would suck. This is the A Song of Ice and Fire series written by George R.R. Martin. You should kind of know that already if you're watching this video, but whatever. The Game of Thrones TV show is based on it. The series is called A Song of Ice and Fire, not Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is just the name of the first book. A Game of Thrones, as you can see. These 5 books, we have A Game of Thrones, A Clash of Kings, A Storm of Swords, A Feast for Crows, and A Dance with Dragons. Storm of Swords, number 3, and Dance with Dragons, number 5, are both split into 2 volumes, which also have subtitles. Storm of Swords, Steel and Snow, Storm of Swords, Blood and Gold, Dance with Dragons, Dreams and Dust, and Dance with Dragons After the Feast. Okay. First thing you should know is the series of books is not finished. The very last book was published in 2011, sorry. The last book published in 2011. There are 8 seasons of the show, which of course does come to a complete end. However, the books end at the end of season 5 / beginning of season 6 of the show. They slightly blend the very first episode of season 6 with the last episode of season 5. That's where the books end. In terms of how I read this series, I just had a look on my story graph, which Diana made me get. I actually began reading this series on the 15th of January, and then I finished it on the 25th of April of this year, and it is now the 5th of... No, it's Star Wars Day! May the Force be with you. It's now May the 4th. May the Force be with you. Yes, perfect. I am a huge Star Wars fan, in case you didn't already know. Of course you didn't already know. You don't fucking know me. Yeah, so if you do them... I just Googled it. That's exactly 100 days, which I thought was kind of funny. There are different editions of these books on Storygraph. I had to find the exact right ones with the right page numbers, so I could accurately put in how many pages I've read and have it give me a percentage of how much of the book is left. I would recommend the app. It's pretty cool. It's free. There is a paid version of it, but I'm only on the free one. Money. Where was I going with this? Yeah. Every single book, because you may have already heard, it's kind of a running joke that these books are very complicated. There are loads and loads and loads of characters who all have full names, different houses, family connections, and backgrounds. And all of that is important in some aspects, because different houses are allies with different people, all that kinds of stuff. So there is an enormous appendix at the end of every book, which gets longer as the series gets longer. This bit in the middle is just the appendix, lists of different characters and who they're allied to. This last bit I'll get to in a second. So yeah, what I did was I took the page numbers right on the last page before the appendix, added them all up. It adds up to, in my set of 4,669 pages, which is an average of 46.69 or 47 pages per day. Now, I pretty much just read these books during my hour's worth of breaks at work every day. Some of the books were really good that I did read a bit more after working at weekends and stuff, but it's an average of 47 pages a day, which if you're a hardcore reader probably sounds like nothing. But I feel like I got through the series pretty quickly. Overall, yeah, the series is great. Really, really enjoy it. Yeah, the one thing that you do need to know is that because the series is not finished, pretty much every single book ends on a cliffhanger or like a really big event where loads of characters die, because that's George R.R. Martin's particular style. And the same is true for the last book. It's a cliffhanger ending and has been for the last 14 years. So that's fun. Okay, let's go in a little bit more depth on these books. First thing you need to know, if you are watching the show as well, or if you already have, the very first book is the very first season of the show is almost a carbon copy of the first book of the series. The same is mostly true for the second book, A Clash of Kings. Pretty close. The second season is pretty close to this. It does begin to diverge as you get through it, and then throughout the rest of the series diverges more and more. My favourite books, definitely the first two are up there. They are really good. Very good reads. I flew through these first two. Things begin to bog down a little bit towards the end of the first book, or in the second volume of the first book if you have a 7-book set like I do. A Feast for Crows. This one is definitely the slowest read. I really wasn't that into this book until I got right to the end, when there is a little note. The books are written in chapters where each chapter is named after the character that their main focus is on. So there are loads and loads of different main characters whose POV we're kind of following. Once you get to the end of Storm of Swords, there are quite a lot of POV characters, and they're quite far spaced, geographically speaking, in the world of Westeros and Essos, or west and east continents of the world. And then once you get into A Feast for Crows, the entire book only has about half of all of those POVs that you have become accustomed to, some of which are brand new, I believe. Brand new POV characters that you really weren't expecting. So that really throws you off, and I wasn't expecting this at all. Another thing in this book is they start introducing POV characters, but by giving them nicknames rather than their actual name, which means you then have to do a bit of riddling to try and work out who the book is about for a second. It's like, why can't you just give them the names? That is also carried over into the last book. Again, there are more POV characters that we didn't have before, and that also ties in with some plot twists of different characters that you didn't think existed, but actually they did, and now they're becoming important, which just makes the fact that this series has been unfinished for 14 years a bit of a kick in the balls. So yeah, Feast for Crows is a tough one, but then there's a note right at the back that says, hold on, where is everybody, I hear you say? And then it basically explains that we're going to go back to those characters in the first half of the next book, Dance of Dragons, which essentially implies that these two books could be a tandem read. And if I'd known that at the beginning of the book rather than at the end, it would have been... I wouldn't have been as bothered about the fact that we're now looking at characters that... We've built up loads of characters in Storm of Swords, and then we're just going to pan away from all of them for a whole book. But then once you realize that these two books are actually going on pretty much at the exact same time, you could tandem read them, and it would probably give you a better experience. And if I ever reread this series, I might do that myself. The annoying thing is the note about all the different characters, and we forgot this person and this person, is at the end of the book. Whereas in Storm of Swords, for example, there's a note right at the beginning. Yeah, it basically just says, like, we're going to be kind of going back and forth in time, or things in two different chapters will be going on at the same time, and so on, so just use your brain. If only there was a note about the changes in POV characters at the beginning of this book, then I would have understood a bit better. But anyway, as I got through the series, I realized there were quite a few things that actually I felt that the show actually did better than the books, and then other areas where the books definitely did better than the show on certain characters and events. I think one of the very first ones, I'm going to talk about where the TV show did it better, actually. One of the first ones, and here there are going to be some character name drops, potential spoilers, and so on, so shut up. In the very first series, and then moving into the second series, I believe, and the first and second books, the brother of the king, Renly Baratheon, he is, in the books, it's very mildly alluded to that he could be a gay character, because it's like, oh, he likes to dress nice, that kind of stupid stereotypical stuff. But in the show, he actually is gay. He is with a character called Sir Loras, who he then allies himself with and all that kind of stuff. But all of that is given more meaning when you realize that they're actually together behind the scenes. And obviously this being a medieval type of show, being gay is frowned upon, all that kind of stuff. And it's taboo and all that. And I felt that the show actually did better in building that relationship, showing us, well, the relationship didn't exist in the books, really. But the show, I think it was a great idea to include that. It helps to solidify both of those characters and actually give them more meaning to the audience for their eventual deaths, or at least one of them, whatever. So yeah, I think the show really did better on that. I made a note of another place the TV show did it better. The interaction between Theon Greyjoy, Reek, and Ramsay Bolton, Ramsay Snow. Yes. Okay, this is all going to be spoilers now. Basically, in the show, if you've seen it, Theon takes Winterfell with the Ironborn, and then it's taken back from him by a small army of Northmen, and they're led by Ramsay. In the show, he's knocked out, taken prisoner, and then tortured a bit, and then he's actually released by somebody. He's like a cleaner or something. He's like a servant. He's released under the guise that his sister is saving him, basically. But then the guy who's saving him forms a bond with him and gets him to spill some secrets. And then he ends up luring him, taking him straight back to the castle he just broke him out of, and literally puts him straight back into the torture room that he was in before. So right when he thinks he's safe, the whole illusion is ripped away, and it turns out that this person who broke him out and brought him back is Ramsay Bolton, the person who captured him in the first place, and is then going to torture him some more. And I feel like the show did a really good job of making Theon feel safe and then ripping all that away. The books originally did something similar. After Theon gets tortured some more, he hang on, why am I talking about any of this? Diana's going to watch this and then she'll get spoilers. Oh, sorry. Do I talk more about this? I don't know now. I only just realised that. Oh well, I'll continue. Once Theon gets tortured more, he ends up being brainwashed into becoming a slave whose name is Reek, because he smells bad. But in the books, Reek is already a person who works for Ramsay Snow. But there is still an illusion there, is that when Theon first meets Reek, he doesn't realise that Reek is actually already dead, and Ramsay is pretending to be Reek. And then eventually, he releases, the illusion is done, and then Ramsay then turns Theon into Reek by torturing him. So it's a similar idea, but I think the show did it better in making Theon feel safe, and then making him spill important plot-based secrets in a more kind of candid way. I don't know. Instead of torturing them out of him, he felt safe enough to spill the secrets that way. So yeah, now I've given loads of spoilers to Diana. I don't know what to do about that. I might refilm this. I don't know. Moving on to where the books did it better. Number one is Prince Aegon. Obviously, this is a huge spoiler. Basically, Daenerys is an aunt of Prince Aegon and Princess Rhaenys, who are like, Aegon's a baby, Princess Rhaenys is like a toddler, a little kid. When Robert Baratheon's rebellion wins, the two Targaryen babies are killed. But Prince Aegon specifically, as a baby, has his head smashed into a wall. Dreadful stuff. And then he's covered with a Lannister cloak or something to be presented to Robert and be like, the babies of your enemies are dead. Where's my promotion? But it turns out that much later, that baby actually isn't Prince Aegon, and that he was safely taken away and raised by one of his dad's friends, so that he may eventually come back, because he is of royal blood. But obviously Daenerys believes that she is the only Targaryen left, and it turns out she's not. And since Aegon is a boy and is the son, he's closer in line to the throne for at least a couple of reasons. And the only issue is, in the books, he's then revealed in the very last book, but he's nowhere near Daenerys. Like, they're not going to meet and have a conflict or join forces or whatever, because they're in two completely different places. We just know that they both exist. We have no idea how it's actually going to pan out. So yeah, I think that was a really interesting thing, where obviously the show, none of this is ever really, the two Targaryen babies are talked about, and that they're dead, that they were murdered, but they are just dead. Like, they're not coming back. And I do think it would have been cool to see, for there to be one more Targaryen who could actually kind of challenge Dany for the throne. Yeah, that would have been cool. Another place where the books did it better is both Euron Greyjoy and Victarion Greyjoy. Euron Greyjoy in the show is just dreadful, terrible, terribly written, wishy-washy ass character, when he's supposed to be like this mega dangerous pirate and all that kind of cool stuff. But no, he's just kind of a sex pest. It's like, that's it. He just wants to go make babies with Queen Cersei. It's like, okay. So yeah, the books definitely gave him a lot more depth, and the books have Euron's brother Victarion, who kind of lives in his shadow, but he's basically been, once Euron becomes king of the Iron Islands, he then sends his brother Victarion away to go and get Daenerys from Essos and to bring him back to Euron to marry her. But because he's just been spurned by his brother, he decides, I'm going to go and get Daenerys, and I'm going to make her marry me. I'm going to take her from my brother, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's, at the end of the books, it's shown that there are multiple suitors on their traveling to Daenerys to go and try and make a match with her. Aegon is one of them, then there's Victarion, then there's one or two others. And that's a whole thing that was cut from the show. None of that is really shown. And I think it should be. The one thing that I really wish the books had done differently, I think the biggest win that the show had over the books was the marriage of Robb Stark. In the show, he marries a girl from Volantis called Lady Talisa, and they first meet when she is giving whatever medical help she can to enemy soldiers after the battle. She's trying to save everybody, amputating legs and stuff like that. And Robb is actually really inspired by the fact that she doesn't care. She's like Doctors Without Borders or whatever. She doesn't care if they're on the good side or the bad side or whatever. She just wants to stop people from dying. And that kind of courage starts to build the bond between them, because initially they're almost like an enemies to lovers kind of thing, but they're not enemies. It's just like she doesn't like the fact that he's running this war because it's making more dead people and she has to look after them. But then that kind of begins their bond, and it develops slowly through the season 2/3, I think. However, in the books, that character doesn't exist. They don't meet. None of that happens. And I was literally just reading through, being like, when's Lady Talisa going to show up? Because up until that point, the show and the books were very, very similar. So that was really the first main divergence. I just think the show did it better, to be honest. In the books, he does eventually meet someone when he goes to take their castle, because they're technically on the enemy side. And then it's basically they have a one-night stand, and then he marries her for the sake of honor. And yeah, that goes about as well as you think it would. And obviously she's pregnant, I believe, from just that. And then things happen, if you've seen the show. That particular event, if you know, you know, that goes pretty much the same in the books as it does in the show. And all the shock and awe of it happening is pretty similar, pretty good. And that is the ending of book 3, I believe. Right, so we've gone over how I read the books, what I liked and didn't like about them, and how the TV show versus the book did better or worse. Now we need to look at the future of the series. As I said, the last book ends on a big cliffhanger, which is between seasons 5 and 6 of the show. Obviously, there are 2 more seasons of the show, and we know how the show ends. Obviously, there was a lot of controversy around how the last season of the show was made very poorly, and not many people really liked how it ended. There's already so many videos about how people feel about that, and I could probably make a completely whole other video about my opinions on that, but this is more about the books. Like I said, the last book was published in 2011. It's been 14 years since then. I hope my math is right. I hope it is actually 14 years, because I could be wrong. My edition of the book, and I don't know if they all do, but my edition has a sneak peek chapter from the next book, which is called The Winds of Winter. Martin had said, after this book came out in 2011, he was then said that the next book would take 3 years, And then when it got to 2015, he was interviewed again, and they called him out on it, and he was like, "Listen, it'll be done when it's done. Chill out." Well, we're still waiting. He said several times, like giving like little progress updates about how much of this book is done. His most recent one I could find was 2022. He said that Winds of Winter is about 3/4 written. And then, I mean, I don't know how many like rewrites and editing and going through publishing and stuff. I don't know how long that takes. He also has plans for A Dream of Spring, which is the book after that. He said he's not going to start writing that one until he's finished Winds of Winter, and he said he's not sure if he's going to end the series after with Dream of Spring or if he's going to do more after that. I don't know if he's going to live that long, to be honest, if this is the rate at which he's churning out books. Obviously, once they started making the Game of Thrones show, he had a big part in that, so that was taking most of his focus. And he's also written a lot of like spin-off series, stories, short stories and stuff within the Game of Thrones universe about characters from the past and all that kind of stuff. I haven't read any of those. I don't know if I will. So yeah, that's where we are with what we're hoping that will come out next. As I said, the last update that I could find was still 3 years old. Chop chop, Mr. Martin. Yeah, overall, I would definitely recommend this series. It is really good. Like I said, there are high and low points. If you've seen the show already, which a lot of people have, I still recommend reading the books. There are a lot of changes, a lot of characters and plot lines and stuff that weren't that didn't make it to the show. A lot of things are very similar to the show. A lot of the core aspects are pretty similar. So yeah, that's pretty much my rundown of A Song of Ice and Fire. Sorry, Diana, for the spoilers. I don't think I'm going to refilm that part of the video. 'Cause I don't know how I'm supposed to talk about the book series without giving spoilers away. Like, I'd have pretty much nothing to talk about if I couldn't mention where the show and books do it better, for one. So anyway, that is the end. Like, comment, and subscribe, etc., etc.